World has gone mad. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or a wizard to tell you that. The energy is off, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And, I run into people, people are so preoccupied with the smartphone now. They're not looking up from the phone. No one has a sense of community anymore. There doesn't feel like there's a sense of community unless you go to church or some kind of a social club where you can have like minded people meet and either worship or communicate with each other and agree on certain topics like a book club or something of that nature. Other than that, the energy is off. Everyone feels isolated. And I fear that this is only going to get worse. And there's a lot of blame to go around. But for me, it's greed. It's this capitalistic, let's save everything for the elite wealthy and then let all the peasants fight for themselves. Basically, we're going into a second Gilded Age. And it started in the 80s with deregulation, eliminating union jobs under the Reagan administration. I mean, this honestly, this is where a lot of this started. But the unions, even with their flaws, the labor unions are what helped create the middle class. Because before labor unions, there was rich and poor and nothing in between. So we're going just like the Gilded Age. And not to mention, let's not forget, you were working 5, 6, 7 days a week, at least 6 days a week, 12-hour days to 13 to 14-hour days. There was child labor. And it seems, if you look at corporations now, you look at it, we have lost a lot of benefits, vacation time. We lost the pension for the 401k. Now, a 401k is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but back in the day, you had a pension. It was just set up in a more fashionable, easier way. Your retirement. You could stay at a job, and it could basically maybe even be your job for life because it paid well or it paid enough to where you could support a family. Now we are run by corporate billionaires who give us the technological advancements that don't really help us. They help us, but they also hurt us. I love technology. I love watching TV. I love streaming, but I find myself spending more time browsing content than watching content because of the algorithm. Before the algorithm was invented, whatever you looked up on the internet, that's what you looked up because you wanted to look up that specific thing. Now, it's probably given to you a lot of the recommendations based on the algorithm. It knows what you like, it knows what I like whenever I stream things. And let's also talk about how people treat one another out in public. Like, I feel like even just when I went to the grocery store and got back just now, people don't know how to walk in a grocery store anymore. And it's just weird. Like, they'll cut you off, they'll walk in front of you. There's a respect, especially if you have a cart, you just go straight, look out, be mindful for other people, wait and see what they do. The energy's off. The energy's off. Um, a possible war with Iran. Do you know how crazy that is? A war with Iran, like the last few weeks have been insane. We've done this dance before. I'm a millennial. Remember Iraq and Afghanistan? Those of you who are old enough to remember Iraq and Afghanistan, how big of a big mistake that was because, we had the terrorist attack on 9/11, which, by the way, a lot of those plane flyers, those occupants, the terrorists, were from Saudi Arabia. But for some reason, we get this big story that Iraq, the country of Iraq under Saddam Hussein, has weapons of mass destruction, and Afghanistan has the Taliban, and we got to go there. Ended up being nearly 20 years of bloodshed and chaos. The same thing that would happen if we actually sent, God forbid, troops to Iran, because Iran, the way it is laid out geographically, is very tactical. It's protected by mountains. The only way into Iran is over and letting troops in that way, which they could definitely take out from the ground. It's just like another Vietnam or Afghanistan. No matter how strong the United States military is, which it is, it's the strongest in the world. We have the best troops in the world. We have the best weapons in the world. But when you go into a country like Vietnam, Afghanistan, or Iran, it's set up for failure because they have the upper hand in defense mechanisms and defensive maneuverabilities. So anytime that there's going to be a conflict like that, even though we have the most powerful military in the world, we're set up to lose. We're set up to fail. And it's crazy. Don't take my word for it, but this president ran on no new wars. Well, that no new wars has resulted in thousands of airstrikes and all kinds of threats. And it has threatened the people in our whole nation in terms of our gas prices, how we get our energy, how the Middle East gets its energy, its oil. And so it's like we're living in like a nightmare, honestly, in terms of the leadership, the direction the country and the world is heading, the direction the world is heading in. And I'm just like, as a person who grew up as a millennial, like we grew up not just with 9/11, but we had the Great Recession, which is what led to President Obama's election in 2008. It just always just seems as a millennial, there's always some kind of chaos that we've had to ensue or had to go through. And like, I don't know, there's just something off. It's everything's not what we were promised. We were going to be the generation, the millennials, that took the bad and made it better. But then a lot of us graduated college, even like we're probably one of the most educated generations of that ever was. And the lack of opportunity or the lack of these jobs, even though you got a degree, a lot of these colleges became sort of like a diploma mill. And you got educated, but you have to look for basically a needle in a haystack to get the jobs that suffice what you went to school for, especially if you're like in political science, where you have to either live in DC, know somebody, or get your master's degree, or even get your doctorate. The people that are guaranteed a job out of college the most are people in the medical field and lawyers. But they say there's a dime a dozen of lawyers. You could take a rock and throw it and hit somebody that's a lawyer. There's so many lawyers. The medical field and engineering, I would assume, are the most in demand. But I read about engineers having a lack of finding a good job. They're either overqualified or the people aren't just hiring. And then we have to hear about the potential AI that's taking over. Like, do you see what I'm saying? It's just weird. It's a weird time to be around. I know you feel it. I feel it. We all feel it. The cost of living has gotten unbearable. Affording a one-bedroom apartment is nearly impossible. And it's not impossible. It's not impossible. But you rented an apartment because you couldn't afford a house for years. And for like 15 years, 20 years there in between, owning a house was cheaper than renting. Back in the mid 2000s to even the late teen, like 2015, 16, owning a home was cheaper than renting. Now we're actually going back to what it used to be back in the 70s and 80s. Renting is cheaper than owning a home. But even the rent is nearly, even in normal cities that have a decent weather, like Tampa, Charleston, South Carolina, Orlando, rent is between $1,600 to $2,000. And that's just for a one bedroom. And it might not seem terrible, but when the area or if the area doesn't have the jobs that can suffice that and supplement that, it's rough. It's a rough life. So it's just crazy. Like the and the energy, the way we treat each other, it's just off. Go to a gym. Everyone's wrapped up in their own little world. And I get it. Like if you got an audiobook or something, that's totally cool. But there's just like a sense of community. And the older I get, the more I appreciate community, a sense of community, being together, being a part of a group that shares your values and shares your ideas. It's a weird time to be alive. And I really hope that the situation in Iran doesn't escalate and we just chill for a minute. Just take a step back and just relax, get a breather because we cannot sustain this. The boomers, great people. There's some great boomers in the world. My parents are boomers, but there's a lot of boomers that are out of touch who grew up in a different time, who have no clue how the average person lives. They have no clue what the average person has to go through to live in this world, to live in this modern world. They need to all be voted out of your offices, our offices. They don't know the real world. They're living in a world mindset 40, 50 years old that does not match up with the reality of today. I know I'm not alone here. But what say you? What do you make of all this chaos? We've been there and done that. All what's happening now is just a repeat of stuff that we did 20 years ago. And we don't get the good pop culture that comes with it because despite the Iraq war, despite Afghanistan and the recession, we had good music, we had good movies, we had a lot of stuff to look forward to in terms of our arts culture. The arts culture right now is going through a big revamp. It's all streaming, it's all bundles, it's all remakes of the same stuff. And we've got it all for corporate, all for money. They're scared to take risks. A lot of CEOs in Hollywood, they're scared to take the risk. In the 90s and early 2000s up to mid 2000s, CEOs would take a risk. They would green light projects and take a leap of faith. And that's usually how all good stories come about. It was a leap of faith. It was a chance. It wasn't guaranteed success. It wasn't guaranteed money, but who knows what could happen from it? Look at Breaking Bad. Look at The Sopranos. We didn't know that was going to be a success. The Office. None of the greatest shows of all time were going to guarantee. And they think superhero movies is all people want to watch. Well, they're fun. I like superhero movies, but there's more to the world and there's more to life than superhero movies. We're lucky we got One Battle After Another, which, by the way, if you never watched One Battle After Another, it was a great movie. It was a great movie. Paul Thomas Anderson, the guy who brought us There Will Be Blood, Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Dano, excellent movie. So there's needles and haystacks. You'll have good movies here and there, good shows, even on streaming, even though they're not as good as they were 10 years ago. They're not as good as they were 10 years ago, but I guess I'm feeling nostalgic. I'm longing for a time where even though it wasn't perfect, it seemed more stable. It seemed like your dreams were more in tune and more realistic to happening, or the possibility of those things happening. But that's all I got right now. The week of March 23rd, 2026. Let me know in the comments what you think about the energy in the country. What's happening? Do things feel off to you? Do people feel off to you? Am I alone? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know what you think. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I usually talk about books, movies, um, my Christian videos that I upload, my shorts, faith, community, everything. I talk about everything. So if you like what you watch, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I plan on doing more talks like this as well. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Okay. Thanks for watching if you made it this far.